Hello, kittens. This is Kpop Juice. I'm Ananas. Um, the first part of music genres in K-pop, we talked about electropop and about post-disco and disco genres, several disco genres in K-pop, and I think R&B. And we talked about tropical house and Mombaton. And now we're gonna. There's many other genres influences that are very common. So we're gonna talk about some of the 80s influences, the synth-pop and new wave, etc. But first, let's talk about hip-hop, which is also ubiquitous in K-pop. When I first got into K-pop 10 years ago, actually, my entire time in K-pop, I've always heard people say, why do you even need to have rappers in every group? Why do you need to have rap in every song? And it does seem to be very kind of strict and arbitrary. So I get that sentiment, but at the same time, I was always very happy. I remember when I got into K-pop, I was very happy with the rap verses in the K-pop songs because the music otherwise is kind of warm and rich and sweet, and it needs that breathing room. It needs that edge. The rap verses actually, in the dynamic of the song, were generally very welcome, kind of very refreshing. Back then, it was really only like Big Bang and Block B that had a really good rap. And Block B, that's because Zico, I don't know if that was just dumb luck that they got that kid, but he proved to be one of the most talented musicians in K-pop, and in particular, gifted rapper. Zico from Block B. It became so influential. But there was always that attempt to have the rap, and since it was arbitrary, it kind of resulted in a lot of questionable. I have memories of questionable rap verses all over the place, but like it shifted. I think the change probably started when they started BTS because they were recruited rather differently. They really took the trouble to find kids that were underground rappers, so they constructed that group BTS out of genuine rap talent that I think you can trace the kind of the entirety of their career and their success and their all the specific details of their global success, the success in the United States, all of this, like maybe the biggest factor or like the crucial key to that success was that they chose people that are genuine gifted rappers. And that probably started the whole thing, but like more kind of overtly. Uh, there were developments around 2015 and 16. 2015 saw the debut of two new groups, almost like sibling groups, you know, that thing where like two groups debut at the same time and they end up like that many people that like one of them like both of them, and the groups end up friends and the fandoms end up being close. And so there was that in 2015 with like sibling groups almost, 17 and Monsta X, where they had Chuhan of Monsta X as a genuine rap talent, and also Vernon in 17, and also I Am Changkyun. These people proved talented, and then in 2016 it was kind of an earthquake because, definitely in retrospect, because that's the first time the NCT debuted, that's the first time that SM finally got a clue and they really kind of got with the program, and they constructed for the first time the new boy group around specifically around these two kids, Taeyong and Mark, that with genuinely talented rappers. I think if you go now, you can probably still find on YouTube the sometime pre debut. I don't know, 2015 or 14, or there's a teaser video thingy of Taeyong when he was a teenager, when he was a kid, when he was a trainee. Just like a teaser video with like a short rap verse or something, showing that they had a kid with some actual rap talent. It's probably still there. Now I wanna go listen to that. So the whole NCT concept, as it still is, as we know and love it, is finally built more on hip hop with some actual people that can actually rap, and you can see the difference since then. There was always a lot of like pushing, like forcing people into rap positions that at best were natural singers, not really natural rappers. And they end up, sooner or later, they end up singing in some capacity. Pretty much almost all the rappers end up singing. And they're better at that. Because most of them are not natural rappers. But you can really see, especially since like 2016 or whatever, there's more and more of the quality of the rap being better, with probably a chicken and egg thing of the probably Korean kids being influenced by the success of K-pop start actually practicing rap earlier, and the companies train them better, and so you get an overall increase in the quality of rap. It's a this whole mechanism feeds itself. So now hip hop in K-pop groups is better. There's also, of course, there's also Korean rap. There are rappers. I don't look that much into that. I feel we've been getting quite a lot just out of people that were or are in mainstream K-pop groups. Like Yezi was in Fiesta, and she is such a good rapper. I don't know if she's like famous or successful or popular. I don't know how well she's doing, but musically, just her stuff is so good, so fun. So this whole industry of K-pop groups keeps producing consistently some rap talent now, and there are people that, I mean, I remember like years ago, like Jackson and GOT7, when they were a baby group many years ago, and he was on a show with the artist formerly known as Rap Monster, which is now RM from BTS, and they told Jackson like, let's do a rap battle or show us like or something, and he was like, guys, are you trying to make me look bad? Because years ago he knew he kind of had no hope of competing with RM, but nowadays, the last few years, Jackson just vocally has been really on point. His skills are great. He's doing well. I'm losing my train of thought. What was I? I don't know what I wanted to say. So the K-pop groups you get. I'm so sorry that my voice is shaky. I'm just too weak. It's probably super creepy. I'm so sorry. In YG Entertainment, they'd always emphasize the quality of rap in recruiting and training, especially in recruiting their trainees. They choose people that are very gifted rappers. They really know what they're doing. So I remember in like 2000, so they have the best rappers in Big Bang, and then in Winner, and then in Icon, and probably now in Treasure. From what I've seen, I haven't looked that closely into it, but from what I've seen, they're also very good. They really find the best people. In 2014, Mino had a solo song on one of the albums called I'm Him. I don't even know what it would sound like now to new K-pop fans. I just really loved it back then. It was so fun. And Zico always has stuff like everyone maybe remembers that were around at the time. Bermuda Triangle. Also, no, Zico, like anything Zico. There's so many, but with Zico, he's very versatile. Like the music styles that he does are really versatile, and even the vocal styles that he does, it's everything. But yes, he just released a song called No Name, so good. And G Dragon on top of Big Bang had famously Jara, uh, but also years before that they had Knockout with that song with the same bubble bubble double double combo something that was cute, bubble bubble something. Icon always have some kind of emphasis on rap in their songs. It's so good. Icon Airplane was particularly good in their early stuff. I was very impressed by that song. Pentagon have just like, for example, they had a song of the rap line. It's called "Do It for Fun." That's just for fun. It's fun. It's really just a fun song. NCT have here and there these kind of rap heavy tracks like Mad Dog and Mad Town and uh, uh, Sit Down, was it? And something. Sit Down? Zip It, Lock It Down. No. Quiet Down? No, Quiet Down. That's something else. Probably Sit Down. And the years ago, Sugar of BTS, Min Yoongi, if you reverse the letters of his name and you add a couple of letters, you get the August D. That's his kind of a solo rap name, and he did the solo albums. And CL of 21, also a YG group, has had a solo rap career for very long now, and with some mixed results, because that wasn't musical perfection always, because the writing of the rap lyrics, at least in the past, I don't know if right now I think that it's in a better place, but it used to be just amateur hour lyrics. I'm sorry to be harsh, but I think it's better now. And her music is good. It was always good music. She's an interesting artist. 17 have 3 subunits, and the hip hop unit they do stuff like, in particular, that song "Trauma" I thought was good. Always impressed me, that one, because the beats, those glitchy beats, were kind of unique. At least at the time. Now you hear maybe a little more of that stuff, maybe. And Jackson Wang, around I think 2019, he had a song "Titanic," where the rap vocals, some of it is whispered. That stuff sticks in your head when they do whispers or stuff like that. I've been hearing more and more of that. NCT Punch had whispers, but that it's a different thing. And also Speed, the K-pop group Speed, the rapper in Speed is Zico's brother. What's his name? Taewon. I think Taewon. And so he's also a gifted rapper. So they had a song "Focus" that's just his solo, which, by the way, also History had a song called "One Century." That's just a Lee Jung solo. To the degree that he can be considered a rapper, he's not so much a rapper. He's just this like volatile music genius that can do anything. He's just like Woozy, you know. He's just this genius with all these creative energies flying all over the place. He can do so many things. Yeah, but this is just a few examples that not even maybe the best examples of anything. But the point is, hip hop is all over K-pop in many ways, but also very, very established and strict. Like this thing of we have to have rappers, we have to have a rappers. By the way, NIPEN Um, I've had like 1.5 years of their career now without doing the rap thing in their music, which is not so much because there's no interest in their company to have rap in their songs. I think it's just because I suspect that just the company feels they're not ready, that they're waiting for the members to become really good rappers because they don't have enough experience with that. I think that's what's happening. And so they did like 3 albums so far that don't have rap verses. And this worked out, I feel, particularly well. They These albums are really good, the music is really good, and they managed to give it a sense of variety and dynamics and kind of an edge to some of the songs without doing the rap thing. We know that they're probably gonna rap. I mean, we've heard them rap in some live performances, like covering songs that like block bass songs and that kind of thing. So we've heard many of the members rap. And we know there's some potential there. So I think it's in the works and it's just a matter of time. But yeah, it can work without the rap for sure. But rap is, and hip hop is all over K-pop 100% in every which way, as a cultural influence, as an aesthetic, and definitely in the music. It's always been there. It's always, probably always will be. And the Korean rap scene and Korean mainstream K-pop are always kind of feeding each other and impacting each other. That people, yeah, okay, you get my. Let's move on to synth pop, and that's a big discussion. Because first of all, synth pop is it can be used. That word can be used as a broad. It can be used to describe like almost any 80s music influence. Almost all of it in some way, to some degree, synth pop. But so, and also even new wave, which in the 80s was even a broader definition. But when I first got into K-pop, synth pop was all over K-pop always, but it was like this more like a upbeat, sweet, bubbly synth pop. But that did end up changing, and in particular, like 2 years ago, the darker new wave 80s sound started to become really prominent, and it's all over now, and like it's all over K-pop the past 2 years. And and also there's the new sound of retro 80s music, synthwave. And by the way, there's also Eurodisco, 80s Eurodisco, which has always been going on in K-pop here and there. Especially JYP likes to do that, and for Sunmi, some of the Sunmi stuff had Eurodisco, and Sweetun, legendary producer Sweetun, always did a ton of 80s Eurodisco, a ton. There are so many Infinite songs and so many Snooper songs that are 80s Eurodisco. So what I'm getting at is that these influences in K-pop are so common, and it started to really bug me wanting to be able to what's the word? My brain is really disintegrating. Okay. I wanted to be able to tell those genres apart properly. I really wanted to be able to understand what it is exactly that K-pop is influenced by, that each song is influenced by. Just wanted to give the right to give the right genre label to songs, and I ended up really over and over trying to go down that rabbit hole and trying to figure it out. And last year, 2021, I finally started to really understand this. So I'm gonna give you my understanding of this. And on the one hand, it's probably imperfect. It could be wrong, because it's just based on me just trying to figure out stuff that there's just not enough resources to figure this out properly. And looking at Wikipedia pages for music genres, um, it never like updates on time. It always gives like a, it's like looking into the sky at night and you see the stars. You're not seeing a snapshot of the stars as they are. You're basically looking into the past. So it's the same with this. I often have that experience of, I just know that there's a new sound going on. It's so obvious. And when I try to describe it as a function of existing genres, I don't have enough, I don't have the exact vocabulary that I need. And then like 2 years later or 5 years later, you go on Wikipedia and suddenly it's all there. The genres that explain all of that, what that was. But it doesn't appear in real time. It only appears after it's an established thing, when you look into the past and you can tell for sure that that's exactly what that was. um, so I can't ever have, I can't have nice things. I can't ever have like an accurate, I can never do this right. I can only ever like find out in retrospect what it was and feel like an idiot and be like, yeah, that's what that was. I was wrong the whole time. I didn't see that. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. Like synthwave, that I kept saying new wave and I didn't even know about synthwave. So that keeps happening. um, so I worked very hard to try to figure this out, and I'll give you my best understanding of it. But the glass half full is that at least it's better than what you could find in many other places, because many of the people in the K-pop fans that look into this, they're not like me. They're not old. They don't remember all that, the 80s genres in real time. They don't have that broad historic perspective. So many times they end up just thinking that all of it is synthwave, or it's a more like simplistic. I really wanted to get a deeper understanding of this. And I ended up, I have, I have my like kind of master file of mapping all of K-pop by genres. And all I've been doing, I feel like all I've been doing for these last 2 years is just move songs from the new wave column to the synth wave column and back and forth and back and forth, and I can't decide because I'm still figuring it out. So, so what I'm gonna give you is like my understanding as I have it right now. That's the best I know right now, and hopefully it might be accurate. But if not, then I'll kick myself for it later, and that's all I ever do. So I guess I'm used to it. So first we have synth pop, which not in the broad sense of the term, but in the more specific sense of K-pop sound that is influenced by 80s synths in the very K-pop way. It's very useful, it's girly, it's cute, it's bubbly, and it's fresh, and it kind of permeates everywhere. Like in K-pop, it's always been everywhere. Luna did that a lot, especially in the beginning. I'll Be There. Maybe you don't remember You and Me Together. Maybe You and Me Together. April did that. There was the title song Moi, Baby April, when they were tiny. And in their debut album, that I really love that album, had that genius song Love Me Times 3. It's LUVMEX3. That was genius. That was the best. I was actually kind of stunned. That was, I think, 2015. It was like 80s synth-pop sound that is kind of better than actual 80s sound. I really loved that one. And Girls' Generation G is synth-pop. They also had a song called Beep Beep. I think that's a Japanese song. And Romeo had Target and Lovesick, which are both sweet tune. And Romeo Target, that's a great example of synth pop as it manifests itself in K-pop as like this bubbly thing. I'm smiling just thinking about it. That song is just makes me super happy. Uh, of course, IOI, very, very, very. I think that one everyone noticed that that's simple. It's so obvious. It's a classic example. It's a good example. And Pristin had in their debut album that song "Running." That's obvious in pop. And I don't know if you remember because it's 2014, but Orange Caramel, a Bing a Bing. That's very simple. Um, and to a degree, Oh My Girl Neon. Also, Old GOT7 song Magnetic. That's a fun song. Also, Candy Jelly Love. That's Lovely's. That's, I think, their debut. It's very simple. History had Psycho that had a lot of synth-pop influence, but also they had an album track called Ghost. A lot of synth-pop influence. And these two are kind of creepy concepts. Horror concepts. Boyfriend Love Style, also sweet tune. Very synth-poppy. Henry 143, maybe something in that area. Also maybe Vic's Time Machine had synth-pop influence. So this is a sound that, from the examples you can see that that's like the older sound of synth-pop in K-pop, but it was very prevalent, and you can still hear kind of touches of this everywhere. It's always going to be everywhere. It's also closely related to electropop. It's kind of similar to electropop. But also in this context, I feel that we should mention technopop. Technopop is kind of synonymous with synthpop. It developed at the same time in Japan. Technopop is basically Japanese synthpop, and it's distinctly Japanese. It's a very unique sound that is phenomenal. It sounds like a little glittery, humid cloud. It's just so heavenly, and it's of course hyperactive and all that Japanese stuff. So, unsurprisingly, that's also common in K-pop. Red Velvet did Sapi, maybe remember Sapi. They also have Ai Tai Tai. That's a Japanese song. And Shiny had a song called Di Di Di, Dance Dance Dance. That is one of the best songs that I've ever heard in my life. And Luna had the song with Grimes, Love Forever. I think that's a Japanese technopop influence. It's also really, really closely related to synthpop. It's basically the same thing. Because that also sounds like Girls' Generation G. And both of them are synthpop, and I think both of them are technopop. Rainbow had a very early Japanese release, Candy Girls. It's so obscure. But that's actually a perfect example because it sounds so Japanese, like Japanese technopop. And a couple of years ago, around 2019 or 2019, I think it was 2019, Eyes One, Eyes On, Is One, had a song called Beware, a Japanese song. I had some of that. Oh, but interestingly, the FX song Sweet Witches, that everyone always wonders so much about because it's so unique and so interesting. I think that a big influence on that is the Japanese technopop, Japanese synthpop. That's a strikingly unique song, and I think that's part of what makes it unique, is that I think it's influenced by 80s Japanese music or something. It's a phenomenal song. Everyone says so. Ask anyone. And Girls' Generation had the idea, and to a degree, that song Visual Dreams, that was like an Intel collab sponsorship thing, commercial song. Recently, Six had a song called Wondering. Well, they've been doing Japanese music now, so some of it has that influence. And I think I've heard some in Banana Allergy Monkey, some techno-pop influence, and maybe a couple other places. Also, there's this ancient song that used to be famous like 58 years ago, IU song called Marshmallow, when she was young and cute. That maybe has some of that influence. And then there's synthwave. And synthwave is actually different from synthpop, but it's very, very, very heavily influenced by 80s music. But it's also a very new sound in a way, because it's like kind of like an offshoot of, or like influenced by vaporwave. So it's one of those genres that uh, deliberately subvert 80s music, turning nostalgia into like a kind of like a nightmare, sinister, like an ironic statement that reflects everywhere that the world has been going to and everywhere that we're still going to our doom. Um, I had, I pretty much still have major problems deciding which K-pop songs are actually influenced by synthwave. That's actually a huge, huge problem, because synthwave, as it was originally constructed, is something that is it doesn't really happen in K-pop. It's not a natural thing to K-pop. It might never happen in K-pop, not really. If you listen to actual synthwave, it really sounds dark and sinister, which K-pop, they don't really do it that way. They just don't. And I'm not complaining, personally. So, saying about any K-pop that it's synthwave, it might be inaccurate. And at the same time, that these last 2 years, the 80s new wave sound being kind of propelled into this genre superstardom in K-pop is, I think, propelled by synthwave, probably. That I imagine that popularity of synthwave globally, which I don't know anything about that. I imagine that it's popular. I haven't listened to anything but K-pop in a decade, so I have no earthly idea. But I think that synthwave is what has been pushing the current wave of 80s retro in K-pop that has been so successful for the past 2 years. And so when I try to kind of pinpoint the synthwave influence in K-pop, I choose songs that do seem to be influenced by synthwave, but they're not exactly synthwave. And I find it very hard to decide on specific songs if that should be called a new wave influence or a synthwave influence. And I feel that generally everything, to a degree, is both. Because this whole sound really is kind of derived from new wave. You can hear that. New wave is a very broad definition in 80s music. And at the same time, the entire current 80s retro sound in K-pop is, after all, music that's been made right now. It's an updated sound. So at the same time, if you call all of it synthwave, in a way that's fair too. So I ended up making some distinctions and making some choices, but I can't tell you, like, I can't like fully 100% stand behind this. This is me still trying to figure this out, so I'm sorry if I steer you wrong. I promise you I will kick myself for it later once I understand this better. I keep trying to understand this better. Just like I said, there's no real good resources for this, and generally K-pop fans that are knowledgeable about genres and talk about this stuff, many of them don't even have the historical perspective, and many of them just really don't know that much. My entire time in K-pop, I only knew two and a half people that know anything about this, and like I'm half of them, so that's also that's why I try to do it myself. I really try. And the other half was this guy that is not even doing this anymore. So there's a song that's not mentioned K-pop. That's indie music, Korean indie music. There was this artist that I think used to be famous. Maybe it's indie. It's not that famous anyway. Neon Bunny. So there was this song "Lost in Love." And that sounds kind of like synthwave. But something that you guys know is Kai from EXO, his debut album had this song that's like new wave but super glitchy called Nothing on Me that really stood out in that album. And that is probably synthwave influence, at least in some way, at least to some degree. Another one on the same album was Ride or Die that also sounds very synthwavy. Um, Another one that sounds very relatively like one of the most synthwavy songs of K-pop is Bad Love by Key. That I imagine that the idea behind this is probably synthwave. Um, Kingdom have whatever. I think an album track called Illusion. Was that a title song? No, I think it's just that it's probably pretty obscure, but at least it's recent. And um, of course, there's the song "A Bit Tipsy" by Yuha. That well, it's new wave, but also it's synthwave. And Dimples by Wusong. Wusong, that sounds synthwave-ish. And Hush by Sunkyu of Infinite. And now we got this new song that came out this year, 2022, Love in Space by Cherry Bullet. That seems definitely influenced by synthwave. I haven't even explained what synthwave is. It's it's like 80s Eurodisco rhythm with like these dark synthesizer sounds that tend to be really glitchy and sound kind of twisted. It's like sick and twisted, dark thing. And it has a lot of influences of 80s music in general, like 80s simple new wave, but it also sounds kind of like almost like a kind of chill wave, but that's particularly centered around 80s retro. So it actually is like a kind of vaporwave, because vaporwave is always like spoofing 80s music. So synthwave is like a kind of vaporwave that is influenced by some very specific things. And actually, if you ignore that that glitch, that like dark, twisted, sinister synth sound, then if you just ignore that element, then yeah, it's all over K-pop. Synthwave, if you just remove that one thing. But I think that that one thing is the point. It's like a sibling genre of vaporwave. That the irony and satire of it is kind of the point. The cynicism is the point here. Brave Girls had lately After We Ride. That seems to be, well, it's retro 80s. This seems to be maybe synthwave influence. Again, it gets particularly hard for me to decide. And by the way, I also wanted to say, in 2020, Brave Girls had a song called We Ride, and that I was right away like flipping, kind of freaking out over it. And I couldn't even, in the beginning, I couldn't even tell you what it is that I love so much. It sounds so good. But in retrospect, it's because there's this genre called city pop that's been, maybe I should just put this off for another discussion. The city pop discussion should be separate, but it's somewhat related to all these genres. So I'll just say that We Ride, Brave Girls, is city pop. It's a Japanese genre, and it's been very popular in K-pop in particular the past 2 years. Like very exactly, accurately city pop sound. So We Ride by Brave Girls was a big one and a good one, but let's talk about that another time. It's too much. So anyway, 80s, since many people know and love 80s. So they have the song, and you can probably guess which one. Take Me Home by 80s. That sounds so retro 80s. That's, again, ignoring the maybe one element, that's definitely synthwave. It really sounds almost exactly like synthwave. There's a lot of synthwave to it. They also, it helps that they did they shot something like a video where they kind of drive a car, and that's synthwave aesthetic. All these vaporwave genres and also chillwave, all of that. They always do that aesthetic of like a car driving through like a city. Um, 17 have a song called "To You." That sounds like synthwave influence. Pristine had Spotlight. That's new wave maybe. And then there's a big important one that's super super tricky. I think people put this song under every which label that you can imagine. But the one thing that's clear is it's an 80s retro influence to some degree. Move by Tamin. There's just, it's hard to determine the genre, but it's easy to say that it's 80s retro. That much you hear right away. But you can say synth pop, and you can say new wave, and you can say synthwave, and any of that is fair, I think. I think you can hear all of that in there. I don't know that it's so easy to say that it's just one of them. It's a little unclear. It sounds to me like all of that. Also, Exclusive by Tamin is also kind of that 80s influence. And then there's a bunch of stuff. Uneasy by 2PM, Upgrader by Lim Kim, Shiny song, Code, that stood out in that album from, I think, 2020. Was it? No, or 2021 it was. There's a Sunmi song, Narcissism. And then there's this whole wave of songs right now, like, that was, I think, in 2020, Chifren Mango, and Twice I Can't Stop Me. All of this seems to have some distinct synthwave influence. And also Stacy So Bad, that became a major hit, is interesting because it sounds kind of like retro 80s new wave or like synthwave, but also has some drum and bass rhythms. I was wondering right away if that's a thing. Is it a thing? Is it already a thing outside of K-pop? So I don't even know. Is this becoming a thing? Is this going to be a thing? I don't feel that I've heard it outside of Stacy specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes a thing. And then there's this song last year, 2021, on an album by ONF, On-Off. There was this song, The Realist. Has like a heavy, deep 80s influence. It sounds like new wave or synthwave. I recommend that one. It's kind of striking. It's kind of biting. It has like a... it's fast, it's dark, it's very atmospheric, it's very echoey. It's gripping. It's a great song. It's a really great song. And a couple of years ago, A-Pink had a major hit song with Ung. That seems to have some synthwave influence. Everglow Untouchable, that song clearly has some synthwave influence. There's a Twice song, Behind the Mask. There's a Dreamcatcher song, Which a Star, that has 80s Eurodisco rhythm, I think, and you could label this new wave or synthwave. Most of this is kind of both. It's really hard to separate. Exogravity also sound like synthwave or new wave. There's a couple others. Even some, maybe in Love Sick Girls by Blackpink, maybe some. And then some songs I think are more distinctly new wave. FX in 2014 had an album track called Butterfly that really stood out. It was one of the absolute first times ever of like a pure new wave, 80s new wave song in K-pop. It wasn't very common. It took several years after that for it to actually become common at all. The last 2 years it's been common, but Butterfly by FX is a classic example of new wave, not just in the sound, but in the whole composition, the melody, the chorus melody. It sounds so much like a new wave song, and that was way ahead of its time, because now it's becoming common. In 2020, I think there was La Di Da by Everglow. So I think that's new wave. And After Midnight by Wavy, that's a classic new wave song. And then Luna had a few years back in the pre-debut solo songs, they had New by Eve. That is classic 80s new wave. And then in 2020, I think, they had a song called Star. The English version is Star, the Korean version is Voice. And that one is by the book 80s New Wave, again, in every which way. Like the composition, the sound, Star by Luna. It even has a music video. It's kind of cute and dark at the same time. And it's exactly like 80s New Wave. I think that both After Midnight by Wavy and Star by Luna, they kind of show everything about New Wave and why it was compelling. That it's pop and it's dark at the same time. It's very hot and cold like at the same time. Holland had a song called "I'm Not Afraid." I think it was his second title song. "I'm Not Afraid" by Holland. That's new wave, and it also kind of stood out at the time because it was right before this became a thing. So it was ahead of its time and it was good. And FX in their 2015 album had a song called "When I'm Alone." It also has kind of that new wave influence. And 2015, Wonder Girls had a song called "One Black Night." That's an album song. It's not a title song. But that whole album had 80s influence, had many 80s genres in it, and it was done perfectly. And then something really old, like 2013 or something ish, After School, Dressing Room, kind of a dark, resonant, dancey, new wave influence. By the way, Key on that album, Bad Love, Key, there's a song 18, and that's also like new wave or synthwave or just the broader new wave sound, even touching on like when new wave started in the 80s, it was also kind of post-punk. Some of it was really still rooted a lot in rock music. There's a bit of a hint of that. And Tamin Criminal, that's also kind of new wave, kind of synthwave. I couldn't even tell you. There was a song around 2019 or 18. There was a song "Remember" by Nine Muses. That's kind of a dark song and gorgeous. It's a title song, and just like all the Nine Muses stuff, it just gets super ignored, and it's so good. It's one of the all-time most underrated groups. Nine Muses, Remember. It's a great song. And then something that I think a couple of you actually know is Initial S by Soli. I think it's a little hard to place. I think that's new wave maybe. And this, we're talking about this right now, but like it's 2022, and I think this is still kind of ongoing. The synthwave influence, the new wave influence. So we'll be seeing more of that, and we'll be hopefully understanding it better, because I'm always trying to. And there hopefully will be more helpful genre definitions on Wikipedia or something. And I still have to talk to you about like a big pile of stuff that is just is common in K-pop, like Latin music, Middle Eastern music, and of course future bass and trap and lots of other stuff. So I'll stop here and I'll make more of this, I hope. I'm so sorry that I'm so useless. My brain barely works and my throat definitely doesn't work. Well, hopefully you understood some of this. If you've listened to all of this, and thank you for so much, I'm grateful. It's so great to have you. And I'll hope to see you again soon.